What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we finally got our answer on Sprintout Times in CoD WW2, and it's going to disappoint a lot of people, myself included. It looks like they are sticking to their guns. They are not changing Sprintout Times in this game. Honestly, I'm not super surprised by this decision. Like I said, disappointed, but not super surprised, based on the post that we got a couple days ago where they said they were either going to be making changes or explaining why they won't be making changes and why it's going to be a development decision. It was fairly obvious that the Sprintout time was going to fall in that category, although I was really just holding out hope that it wouldn't, and they would try making some changes. So first things first, before we get into this, I do appreciate the communication. This is what we've been asking for, at least the developers sharing their intentions with the game, as well as explaining some of their design decisions. It's nice to be able to kind of put this topic to bed and kind of get some closure on it and realize that it's not going to be changing, at least not in the foreseeable future. Regardless of how much I disagree with this decision, I respect the fact that it's their game and they can make changes if they want, or they can stick to their guns if they want, regardless of how a lot of us feel about this. At the end of the day, it's up to them to make those changes or not make those changes, and it's up to us to decide if we want to continue playing this game. So let's get into Michael Condry's post on Reddit. I will leave a link to the post down below if you want to check out the whole thing, since I will kind of be summarizing it slightly. Now, the first section of this post explains how they don't want to add a dexterity-like perk, one that reduces your sprint out time, because they don't want a crutch perk to exist. So they don't want to add it as a basic training, and they don't want to tie it into one of the current divisions that are in the game, like Airborne, for instance. This is something that I actually totally agree with. I don't feel that having a lower sprint out time should be a basic training skill or attached to one of the divisions. And honestly, most of us weren't asking for that. The majority of us were asking for a reduction for everybody, like across the board, no perks necessary, nothing like that. So that doesn't really address that issue properly in my mind. It's nice to see that they have a grasp on the whole crutch perk thing and the fact that they don't want more crutch perks. However, that one doesn't really cover our concerns. The second reason they have for not wanting to change these sprint out times is they want a boots on the ground in a World War II era game. And this is something that also kind of confuses me, and I'm not really satisfied with that answer. First off, boots on the ground, this has nothing to do with advanced movement versus boots on the ground. If you look back to basically every boots on the ground game since World at War, we've had a faster potential sprint out time than this. So it's not just taking a step backwards to before advanced movement, it's taking a step backwards all the way back to Call of Duty 4. Every game after that has had a faster average sprint out time or a faster average potential sprint out time with those perks that were available to us, which we don't have access to in this game. So therefore the whole boots on the ground explanation, that doesn't cut it for me. As for the World War II era, again, this is something where it's like the theme shouldn't dictate the sprint out time. And I don't see this as a valid explanation, because if we look at the most recent World War II Call of Duty World at War, for the SMGs, and this is the area where a lot of us are talking about, we want faster sprint out times for SMGs. All of the SMGs in that game had a sprint out time of 200 milliseconds, no exceptions here. In Call of Duty World War II, 3 out of the 7 SMGs have a 200 millisecond sprint out time, and the rest have a 250 millisecond sprint out time, which is equal to the rifles in this game. So on average, the sprint out time for SMGs in this game is slower than the last World War II Call of Duty game we've had, so using the World War II era as an explanation, once again, that doesn't make sense. The theme of the game shouldn't dictate the sprint out time of the game, and the fact that it's boots on the ground is irrelevant, because we're not asking for advanced movement sprint out times, we're asking for modern boots on the ground sprint out times. So far, while reading through this post, I was just shaking my head. I'm not really happy with these answers. I'm not really satisfied with these answers. The next thing he went on to explain is they wanted to make sprint out times equal to our base aim down sight times, which is the way they have it. And I can understand that, but then he also mentions we do have a quick draw attachment, which makes your aim down sight speed faster across the board, and that's great and everything, but the problem is that doesn't address this issue. Quick draw doesn't work coming out of sprint if you break your sprint by aiming down sight. You have to work around that by pulling back on your left analog stick and then aiming down sight in order to get the fast aim down sight time. And what you're really doing here is a workaround. It's not a solution to the problem, it's a workaround that kind of helps a bit, but it doesn't solve the issue. So overall, I'm not really satisfied with the answers that we got from them. I can accept the fact that they're not going to be making the change, and I will respect that decision, even though I will still maybe like push a little bit here and there for a faster sprint out time, because they also indicated that perhaps in the future they might look into something, which generally means nothing's going to happen, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to voice my opinion from time to time. But for the most part, I am going to put this topic to bed. I'm not going to be going on about sprint out times all the time. But honestly, I strongly feel the real reason they want to keep sprint out times the way they are, where it's the slowest they've been since Call of Duty 4, is they want to keep a compressed skill gap. They want to slow those players down that would otherwise be running all over the map, just annihilating everything in their path, and they want to make it more accessible to the newer players that can't keep up with a faster paced game. Now, don't get me wrong here, I'm not necessarily saying that if you're fine with the current sprint out times, you're a bad player. I'm not saying that by any means. I'm just saying the fact that they slow down the sprint out times and essentially eliminated that one playstyle that we've had access to for a long time, this does compress the skill gap. It holds back players that would otherwise be able to push more. Same thing goes with health regeneration. This is another thing that they will be addressing hopefully within the coming days here, and we'll be talking about that when they do address it. But it's another thing that holds back that aggressive playstyle. It holds back those players that would otherwise be running through lobbies, destroying everything in their path. So I strongly feel that's the real reason behind keeping the sprint out times the way they are, but obviously a developer wouldn't want to be coming out and saying, yeah, we want to make sure the skill gap is compressed, and we want to make sure that players are really kept in check to help the newer players out and everything like that. That wouldn't go over well for a developer, so I can see why they came up with these other reasons. I feel like those reasons don't cut it, at least not for me. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's their game, it's their decision, and it's our decision if we want to keep playing it. And honestly, for me, it's one of those things that's just like slowly eating away at me. And this is actually the lowest amount of playtime I've had in a Call of Duty at this point in its life cycle since Call of Duty 4, I believe. And don't get me wrong, I've adapted to it. Like I've said in previous videos, I've adapted and I still am successful with this game. But with the elimination of that playstyle, I feel like there's basically one way to play this game, and that gets really old really fast, and it just doesn't keep me engaged with this game, having a variety of playstyles to choose from. It's basically move around the map methodically, pre-aim everything, regardless of whether or not you have an SMG, a rifle, or an LMG in your hand. It's all the same thing. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's video on this. I'm pretty disappointed, but I am glad we got some closure on the issue. And I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of this whole thing? Are you happy they're going to be keeping sprint out times the same way they are? Are you disappointed they're not going to be changing them? Or are you pretty much indifferent to this? And just what do you think of that post by Condry in general? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.